Hi, I'm Wade from Thoroughbred Diesel, and today we're going to be installing a Redhead steering gear in our 2000 Ford Excursion. There's one up there, see? It's right there. Okay, so you're asking yourself, wait, how do I tell if my steering gear is bad? Well, don't worry, I'm going to show you how. This big waste of oxygen is Chris Shear, and Chris is going to show you how you know whether you got a bad steering gear. So 300,000 miles on our Excursion here. You can see what Chris is doing in the play that he's got on the steering wheel. He's actually turning it between the bumps. Chris, that's pretty free, isn't it? Yes. It's pretty free, no tension to the steering wheel there. A lot of slop in it. So what are you looking at there? What, maybe 2 inches, 2.5 inches? All right, so now we're gonna put Chris up in the air. He's scared of heights, so if he starts crying, we'll edit that part out of the video. So you can see on our pitman arm on our steering gear, with Chris turning it between the bumps, and if you just listen real closely, you can still hear Chris turn between the bumps there. No action on the pitman arm there. If you kind of look back here, you can see that. I don't know if Adam can get you a shot on it. You know what, actually, Adam, you can get a nice shot of it. Looks like right here. I'm gonna get you a better light.
On the job.
On the job,
right
producing and training. You can look up through there, through the bore there, and you can actually see the steering shaft itself turning. Now you come back out here to the pitman arm. Pitman arm ain't turning. Your steering gear, boys, she is wore out. We're gonna put a Redhead on it for you. Our 2000 Excursion, which is a new vehicle added to our fleet, has got about 300,000 miles on it. It's got a lot of steering play in it, a lot of wobble in the steering wheel. So what we wanted to do for that is we wanted to replace our steering gear with a Redhead steering gear. Redhead is one of our newer manufacturers here at Thoroughbred Diesel. You can check out our link to, it'll be somewhere in this video, check out a link to our Redhead steering gear intro video. Talk to you just a little bit about the brand, their founding. Real glad to have them here at Thoroughbred Diesel. Now, I'm going to kind of give you a quick cliff notes of that. Redhead steering gears, these are fully remanufactured gears. Top quality seals in this. You're not going to get leakers out of these guys. The cross section shaft, it is always jigged up. Check to make sure that it's true in a lathe. They machine these out and install needle bearings in them, and they use top quality roller bearings inside the box as well. This gives you just tighter tolerances, better quality box, more longevity, and just a really, really smooth turning action from this steering gear. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our installation on our 2000 Excursion. What we're going to do now to gain access to the collar that is covering the pinch bolt on the steering gear, we're going to go ahead and remove our air intake kit on this 7.3. I've already got my battery out, so the battery tray has got to come out. Make sure that you've got all of your battery cables off. So we're going to go ahead and remove this air intake tray. All right, now we're going to go ahead and remove our intercooler pipe, and what this does is this gives us even more access to the top of the steering gear. What we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and take the pinch bolt out of the steering shaft. Now, before you do this, you want to make sure 100% certainty that you lock the steering wheel inside the cab of the truck. Take the keys out of it, turn the steering wheel to a position to get it into lock position. And what that's going to do is once you turn the pinch bolt loose from the steering gear, it's going to keep the steering wheel from turning inside of the truck and breaking the clock spring inside the column, which is just another disaster. You don't need it. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and do our pinch bolt here on the Fords like this. It's got a guard over it. So we're just going to go ahead and pull our guard back, and it's just clamped over a line here. Go ahead and push it straight back. That gives you access to the pinch bolt. Now these steering shafts have got a flat spot on the steering gear, so it can only go back on one way. But you want to make sure that you get the pinch bolt in a position to where you can get to it. Another thing here is you don't want to have your drag link disconnected when you go to do this. If you've got your drag link disconnected, you're going to get some more turning inside of the steering gear box that it makes it a lot more free. So you just want to make sure that your drag link's hooked up. But 13 metric on this pinch bolt, and we'll go ahead and loosen that up. Already worked loose for us there. PB blaster on this. And I want to show you the easiest way to get this off. If you've got a steering shaft on there that's really super tight, what you're going to want to do, I'm going to reach over Hunter here. You want to use 2 pry bars on this, and what that does is that lets the steering shaft be released from the shaft. Its spline, it releases easier if you use 2, because that keeps good even pressure on it, and it'll back right off there. So this one had already worked it up for us, so we'd have an easier shot on camera, but you can see how using 2 steering shafts there is going to give us a lot better action. So that is removal of the steering shaft. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and separate the drag link from our pitman arm on our steering gear. So first thing we've got to do is we've got to remove the cotter pin here on the from the castle nut. Sorry Adam, my camera was in the way there. I took the liberty of just knocking the hell out of it. And I don't know what kind of Bush League cotter pin this is, but it's a tough one. Right. 13/16 to get the castle nut off. It should come right on off without turning. If it gives you too much, go ahead and put a impact on it. Overcome it with speed. All right. Now, ready to drop the drag link. Trade your places, Adam. All right, we'll stop there and then we'll just show the drag link falling out when I get a big fucking hammer. All right, drag link separated, pick a fork, BFH. Sometimes it helps to have a bigger hammer. A drag link, you want to make sure, don't let it fall all the way down. There's no sense in that. If you can support it right there, get you a tie it up. That just keeps you from stressing out one of the tie rods or that connecting tie rod right there. All right, now we're going to go after our lines. First thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you've got a container underneath of the vehicle or somewhere to be able to catch the power steering fluid that you're going to lose here. So we're going to go ahead and start with our lines. On these lines, I like to always use a line wrench if you can get to it. This truck's got 300,000 miles on it, so I'm trying to, you know, it's one of these things that you've really just got to make sure that you dot your I's and cross your T's on. They're not real tight on the lines. I'll start them like that with a line wrench, and then I move over to a crow's foot, and we'll slip right underneath the Hunter here. I'll move to a crow's foot, and the crow's foot will let me turn it on out. So that's how we do our lines. We're going to go ahead and remove both these lines from the steering gear. On this steering gear, you've got 3 bolts holding it to the frame, 1, 2, and 3 here at the top. 14 metrics on the Fords here. Then that's going to let our steering gear on these trucks. The steering gear, it'll fall right out the front. They're heavy, so you might want to have an extra hand to keep it from dropping right in your lap. So we're going to go ahead and pull these 3 bolts out. All right, we're gonna go ahead and pull the pitman arm now. A word about pulling the pitman arm. What I do is I like to mark, here's the way this lays out. So your cross-section shaft or sector shaft, it is splined 3 different ways. So your pitman arm can go on 3 different ways in relation to the flat spot on the steering shaft spline. So what I like to do is I just like to mark on my steering gear box which way the pitman arm is pointing. And that lets me know where I need to get the new gear going back in relation to the thing. So I'm gonna, if it doesn't get moved, I know the pitman arm is going that way. My flat spot will be there. Just for safety's sake, if you want to do that, you can go ahead and line another mark up with the flat side of the steering shaft for that. That way you can look back at it and know pitman arm out would be here, and then that would put the flat spot on the thing there. So you really can't mess it up at that point. All right, let's go ahead and pull the pitman arm off. 1 3/16 on this particular one. Now, the pitman arm, Ford calls for an OTC tool to be used on this. Excuse me. This is an OTC part number 513405. The cool thing about this tool is this will actually double as the drag link puller. If you have a problem with getting the drag link off, you can flip this thing over and you can put it right on there for that. So we're going to go ahead and use this tool to pull our arm. Give it a little bit of PB blaster so when she starts it going, we won't have any problems. I'm going to use a power tool on this, I know. Just take it easy. It's time to put our pitman arm on our new Redhead gear. So a couple things you want to make sure of. Just be aware, use common sense when you've got this jigged up in a vise. Make sure that you're not making contact with any of the splined shafts. Make sure that you don't have it resting on the adjustment screw. These steering gears, when they come in, they've got a couple of little warning tags on them. Make sure you heed the warning tags. If they tell you to do something, make sure you do it. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and put our steering gear on here. You can see there's 4 spline sections on this pitman arm. It's going to go on one way, and the reason why I say that is because talking about the orientation of the flat spot where our steering shaft hooks up. I can go another direction. Let's say I go this way, but obviously that's not where that pitman arm needs to be. It's not going to be 90 degrees to the box, so that's just another common sense thing there. Just kind of make sure your orientation is right there. So you're pretty close with this. Just put your lock washer and your nut back on. Or drop them on the floor. Go ahead and run this down. All right, we're ready to go ahead and put our gear back in. The Redhead steering gears, they are shipped with these bolts inside of them. They are not for mounting. These bolts are just to protect the integrity of the threads that are in your gear, of your new Redhead gear. So let's go ahead and put this up. What I like to do on these gears is I like to start on my bottom bolt and just get it started, and then that kind of gives me just a little bit of relief there. But I go for that one because it's the one that I can see the best. So I'm going to go ahead and just take that bolt and kind of just push it back there where I can see it. Try to get my hands as dry as I can. And then we'll just feed the steering gear up through there. The good thing about the Fords is you can kind of let it rest right there. I'll get it close on that, and I'll start that bolt. And then that gets me to where I can go ahead and start fighting the other two. Usually the bottom one has the leverage too to pull the gearbox down and kind of line the top one up, and then your rear one will usually fall right in. All right. All right, now we're ready to re-engage our steering shaft to the steering gear itself. Now, I've got the steering wheel in there locked. Again, it's a very, very important part of this is make sure you leave the steering wheel in there locked in the truck, in the vehicle, and that keeps it from flopping around, breaking the clock spring in the column. But on this, we're right back where we were. You can feel inside of that steering shaft for the flat spot on it. If you ever have a question, I've turned my flat spot where I know it's supposed to be. Make sure that you've got the pinch bolt out of it, and then just go ahead and start it on the gear. Oh, there it is. And then you want to go down there. That recess that's in the gear, and pull that back. This recess that's in the gear, this is where your bolt goes through. So go ahead and install our bolts and tighten it down. All right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and go with the drag link. Don't mind the baling twine there. I'm going to go ahead and go with the drag link here. What I like to do here is I want to move the drag link, go ahead and put the drag link on, and that way if I've got to move the pitman arm to get it lined up, I'm not pushing air back into the power steering pump. So I'd do this before I do my line. So I'll go ahead and put my drag link back in. And we'll just tighten this nut back down and get our cotter pin in. So back on top side, we're ready to go ahead and install our power steering lines on this. Both of the lines that were on this truck they were leaking. You could tell they'd been compromised. When I pulled them out of the gear, I had smashed O-rings, so just wasn't something I felt comfortable going back with, so I replaced both of those lines. Now, we're going to go ahead and reinstall our lines. The first thing that you're going to want to do on your engine base, you're going to want to clean everything up real good, brake clean, compressed air, make sure that you get everything clean while the plugs are in the steering gear so you're not putting contaminants into the gear. But now we're going to go ahead and we're going to install our lines. If you've got the power steering lines, if your vehicle's got the power steering lines that have got the special O-rings, the Teflon O-rings, you want to make sure that you're really, really super careful on the reinstallation of those O-rings. You want to change those out or you're going to have a leaker. These have just got the O-rings on the flared ends, so that's the ones that we're going to go with now. I'm going to start with my small ones. Also, on the flares, make sure that you pay attention to the style of flare, because the style of flare is going to determine how you install your O-ring. And with these lines, it's got let's see if I can turn this well enough to see it. It's got the flared at the bottom so that my O-ring just goes right over top of it, just like so. Some of them, they will go above the flare there, so go ahead and remove that. And we'll put our line in real careful, making sure that we're not going to pinch our O-ring there. And get our line started. All right, same thing for our other line. You can see the way that's flared a little bit better on this line. And roll that over the bottom, clean it off. And we're going to pull our plug out. All right, now these lines, light torque on these lines, you're looking at, 20 foot-pounds or so on them, so it doesn't take a ton with these. So be real careful with that. Don't over tighten them, cause yourself a leak. So we're gonna go ahead and tighten our lines up now. One of the most important parts of this installation is the bleeding procedure for the Redhead steering gear. What you're going to want to do is, after you've got your lines already installed, what you want to do is you want to go ahead and top your power steering reservoir off. Go ahead and add fluid in there and get it up to the correct level. At that point, here's where it gets really important. What you're going to want to do is you're going to raise the front of the truck off the ground to where the wheels are off the ground, both the front wheels. Then you're going to want to get in the truck, turn the key on, do not start it. Turn the key on and turn the wheel all the way lock to lock, 15 to 20 times. What you're doing there is you're working the fluid through, getting the gear started, getting the fluid in the gear. Do that about 15 to 20 times and then let the truck sit. 2 hours minimum, overnight is best. That lets the fluid bleed back down into the gear. After a couple of hours, you want to get back in the truck, a couple hours or overnight. You want to get back in the truck at that point, and you want to move the truck all the way left to right, move the steering wheel left to right all the way. 7 to 10 times on that is what Redhead recommends. Then go ahead and start the truck. But when you start the truck, you want to make sure that someone is out here with a funnel and power steering fluid to add to the fluid as soon as it goes down in the reservoir. You're wanting to have somebody there immediately, because if you suck air in at that point, you've got a bleeding problem. So that's the way that we're going to attack this today. We're going to do these bleeding procedures just like that for this gear. Now, these bleeding procedures are on Redhead's website. We're going to link you to them on our website as well. So if you've got any questions about that, make sure that you refer back to that. The bleeding of these gears is very, very important. So I'm going to leave on this installation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave everything off here while I'm turning the wheel back and forth. I want to make sure that I don't have any leaks that pop up. So then reinstallation will just be put the battery tray back in it and go through the bleeding procedures. All right, we got so our Redheads installed. We got our test drive done on our 2000 Excursion. The truck steers flawlessly. All the front end components on this truck have already been changed. So the truck was tight in the front end, save for the steering gear. Just made a humongous change. 300,000 miles on that steering box. You saw how much play was in it. Such a difference in drivability of the trucks. The Redhead steering gear is an amazing product. They do a really, really good job, and we're glad to offer them here at Thoroughbred Diesel. I want to talk to you about core, just a little bit on your core shipment. Show your core. This is an expensive core, a couple $100 core on the steering gear. So I want to show you packaging this thing up and sending it back to Redhead. First off, at the time of this filming, we're going to be including a label in the box to get your gear back to Redhead. But before you package it up, you remember the bolts that we had in there to protect the integrity of the threads. Redhead asked for them back, so we put them back in there. That's just good for them. Then I put my caps back in here. That keeps fluid from draining out of it. You don't want it to be quarantined for hazmat. Getting it back to Redhead, I took their little absorbent sock doohickey pig nose thingy, whatever it is they sent us, and take it. I'm gonna put it back on the gear. That way, if it does leak a little bit of fluid out, that's a pretty absorbent thing, so it's going to catch some of that fluid. And then the gear itself was actually shipped to us in a really, really good bag. We'll reuse that bag. This is just one more thing. We got 3 catch-alls here, the caps, the little absorbent rag, and now the bag on this thing to really keep you from having any problems. Your box that Redhead sends to you in is going to be, already have the jigs in it for the gear itself. Your label, take your label out, get it ready to put back on the box. Throw your core in here the way it came out. Being real careful of the packaging. Fold it up, tape it up, tape the whole box, protect the integrity of the box. Put a few extra rounds of clear tape on it to make sure it gets it back. Slap your return label on there, whatever pocket I put it in. This one here, slap your return label on there and take her to the post office, drop her off, away she goes. So this was our installation of our Redhead steering gear on our 2000 Ford Excursion. Great product, really made a big difference in this truck. If you have a question about this video or any of our other installations, please give us a call. Like and subscribe to our channel. We'd really appreciate that. Thanks for watching.